Welcome, everyone, to season 6 of the Runners Roundtable, where in season 6, we are exploring people's favorite running memories and hearing from them how those memories have changed them, how they have impacted them, and how they've shaped who they are as runners. And in this episode, I'm really excited to bring back, which, if y'all haven't noticed, a big theme of the season has also been bringing back previous guests and hearing them talk about their favorite running memories. So today we are hearing from Kim Silverstein. She was on the podcast. It was season 2, which was the Conversations with Coaches season. So in that episode, we got to hear about who you are as a coach and your coaching philosophy. So I'm really curious this discussion because it's going to be more centered around who you are as a runner. And I think it's going to be a nice sister episode to that of let's get to know Kim real well. So can you give us the next few moments to bask in the glory of who you are by introducing yourself to us and letting us know where you're at with running right now?
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm so glad to talk to you again. I really enjoyed getting to chat a couple years ago and meeting you, and I love listening to the work that you're putting out. It's so great to hear from other people in this field, coaches, runners. They're just nice conversations because, as I'm sure you know, and I mean, you have this podcast to prove it. We love to talk about running. We love to just, it's our favorite thing to talk about. So I'm excited to be back here. Um, I would say I think I've actually changed a lot as a runner in the last few years. And I think that's in part because of coaching a little bit and sort of having a different, now that I've been coaching for about 5 years, having a different perspective, a different appreciation for what I do, when I'm not coaching other people. Um, and it's just given me a different window into the experience and sort of how I treat myself, because I look at the things that I share with the people I coach and the wisdom and advice I offer them, and then really reflecting back, like, am I taking my own advice? Um, so I think that's been one thing that's definitely changed a little bit. I think the last time we spoke, it was almost 3 years ago. Um, and I had just come off of a marathon cycle. I was kind of in a place where I was just sort of reevaluating what I wanted to do next, and was not looking to jump into another marathon, and just kind of wanted to enjoy some shorter distances. And it was actually around that time that I joined a running group here in LA. I had noticed them before at the track where I had gone to do some workouts, and finally summoned up the courage to go check it out. I think I realized what I had been missing in my own life as a runner was community and the social element of it. I think we sort of throw around the idea of like the running community, and it's such a vague and big umbrella, but I was still very much um, running alone a lot, which in some regards was just out of necessity because of my schedule and my other commitments. But I really did miss, kind of being with other people and getting to talk about running with other people, and to, just to have, to be able to take a little bit of the load off of myself and actually sort of surrender to a group, and to not be in charge and to not be in control. And so that's, I think, been the biggest change, and it's been really wonderful, really remarkable to sort of get to know a new community. I've made some great new friends. I've had some really wonderful, unique experiences. So I would say that's the biggest thing that's changed, and sort of given me, it's sort of a renewed sense of joy in this sport, of getting to do it with other people.
Yeah, and it's running is like such an interesting sport for that reason because it is very much so a solo sport. And I say that because a lot of us do train by ourselves. but also because sometimes there is nothing that can break us from the thoughts that are going on in our heads. And we're in it, right? Like it's us against us or us with us in our own brains. Even when you're surrounded by people, you're still fighting whatever voices you might be fighting. So running is really interesting for that reason because you can be surrounded by people and still feel like you're alone. When you can be surrounded by people and feel like you're a part of a community. So I'm excited that you found a community and that it is something that's added layers to coaching for you because let's be real, community is accountability.
Mhm.
Community is the fun, right? Like even if you're going to the track to do a speed workout, just knowing that you're going to be suffering out there with other people makes it a little more bearable. So I love that and that it's informed your coaching because as coaches we're always learning and we're learning from our experiences as runners just like we learn vicariously through the experiences of our runners. So going to the theme of this episode and the theme of the season, it's your favorite running memory. And I was hoping you can paint that picture for us of what your favorite memory is.
Yeah, so I thought about this a lot because I was trying to, I went way back into the, the archives of my mind, since I've been running, since high school, and like I have so many incredible, moments of, of joy, and as a high school runner, our team went to, we got second place in state when I was a junior, and like those things that just sort of, those kinds of moments that feel sort of obvious. But the story I decided I wanted to tell was much more recent, from earlier this year. And it's sort of funny because it's my favorite memory, but it was also a very challenging, and uh, upsetting experience, but that sort of had it that had an interesting turn, which it'll under become clear as I as I tell the story. And I think it's so much more in line with kind of my experience, where I am now as a coach, and as I think about what we just said about, sort of the running community, and all of what that means. So I ran the Tokyo Marathon earlier this year, in March, and it was a total, literally luck of the draw that I got in, and I traveled by myself, out to Tokyo. Just the way it worked out schedule wise, and financially, it kind of, that was what made sense. And
Yeah.
so, I love solo travel. I think it's fun, it's challenging. And, I was going for a purpose, and I knew that there would be other runners there, of course, and that I would be able to make some connections. Um, and so as it turned out, I wasn't really alone. There were actually a couple people from my running group who were there, one of them who was running, and another one who was there, supporting his friend, who was running. Um, and I had also, there was, some Facebook groups of like solo travelers, and different sort of affinity groups. And so I had kind of made some, established some connections beforehand. And so it was really, and have a great experience. So I have a wonderful time, in the several days before the race. Everything's going great. The day of the marathon, it turns out it is one of the warmest days on record for this particular marathon in early March. Um, and for contrast, the next day after the marathon, it snowed, in Tokyo, or it was like freezing rain. So this, like, we went from probably, high 60s, low 70s to like 30s within the span of 24 hours. So it was a warm day. The marathon was not, exceptionally prepared, I don't think. And in Tokyo, there's a lot of, specific rules around, what you're allowed to bring as far as hydration. You're not allowed to bring any of your own hydration onto the course. So you're really just at the mercy of, the water tables, uh, which which for me actually was fine, but people who were, running behind me, um, there were a lot of stories of people running out of water. And they would get to a table, and if there was like one bottle left, someone would grab the bottle and they were sharing it amongst themselves. So that's kind of the backdrop of how this day is going. So I start, and I'm actually with a new friend, someone who I met there. And he and I we were able to find each other sort of miraculously in the throngs of people at the start. And we ran together for about the first half of the race. And we were doing great. We knew that we were looking at sort of the same pace and had a similar goal. So we were kind of like pushing each other and holding each other accountable, which was really wonderful. And then about halfway through, he started to fall back a little bit. So I was on my own. And, I'm going through the rest of the race. I get to, I want to say about we're probably at this point, like mile 25. It was like 40 kilometers. Um, and I knew that I'm almost done. I look at my watch and I'm on pace to get a PR. And like, I do the kind of quick math in my head of like, okay, you've got like, you've only got, 13 more minutes on your feet and then you'll be done. And it's that like, whatever, you just need
Yep,
to kind of
that
get
countdown.
through. Yeah. Like to count the countdown. And so that was about 40K. And so that's the last thing I remember. Um, the next thing I remember, I'm waking up in the medic tent. I had no idea how I got there, no idea how long I had been there. Like how much time had passed. Did I finish? What happened? Very, very confusing, very upsetting. And as I'm kind of quickly trying to piece all these things together, and they tell, they're telling me, it was dehydration. And that was also a little bit confusing because I took water at every stop. I thought very mindful of, taking care. I mean, yes, it was hotter than normal, which obviously had an effect. And I had been fueling, I had been doing all these things. So I just kind of like really had no idea how I had gotten to this, and it's also, you're staring at this tent, you're surrounded by people speaking a language that you don't speak. There's music blaring on the speakers. I can hear the finish line announcer, in Japanese. I have no idea what's going on. And you're probably wondering, why is this your favorite story? But it gets interesting. So anyway, I ended up being fine. They took me to a hospital. I got fluids. I perked up right away and thankfully was okay. I did finish the race. We'll get to that in a moment.
I was gonna say that's where I'm just like,
Well, right, because at that point, right, like the last thing I remember was I was at like 40K. I'm like, oh, there's, that's literally like a mile and a half left. So they brought me my medal to the hospital. Okay, so now to sort of pull back to like why this was actually a really incredible story. So a few days before the race, when I had gone to the expo, I had also bumped into another runner friend from Los Angeles, someone who I just kind of know from races and someone I've connected with. And so we happened to be there at the same time together. So this is all sort of, you're not really alone when you're, even if you're traveling alone, there's obviously, you find everyone you happen to know in the universe who all went to the other side of the globe together. After that, I just decided to go to this art museum by myself. And as I'm waiting in line, I hear a familiar voice behind me and I turn around and it's another friend, someone who I did not even know was going to be there. Some friends of mine who I haven't really been in touch with in a while, but my friend Tim, he's a marathon runner. So of course, like as soon as I saw them, I'm like, oh, of course he's here to run. And his wife, who I used to be very close with, and we just sort of fell out of touch, but like we had this incredible reunion. I got to spend a lot of time with them over the course of the several days that we were all in Tokyo together. So these are all the pieces of the people who were, in kind of my orbit while I was in Tokyo. So when I'm in the hospital and finally feeling better, I'm finally able to check my phone. And of course, like my phone's blowing up and everyone's like, where are you? Like, like some of it's congratulations and people are sending, there's all these chats going on. And I had spoken to my family at that point already. So they knew I was okay. And I open up Instagram and I see that someone had sent me a friend request and I thought like, oh, that's kind of random. I just sort of ignored it. And then I go into the group chat for our running group. because as I mentioned, a couple people from our group were there. And so my friend Johnny had posted, he had taken a couple pictures of me when he saw me on the course, and they posted on Instagram and then reposted it and all of that. So I'm all in there and everyone's trying to check in and figure out what's going on. And he sends me a message and he says, check your Instagram and accept the friend request from the person who requested you. I said, okay. So I go in and find it. He goes, that's the person who like saved your life and like brought you across the finish line. And so of course I'm thinking like, how did this guy find me? Like, I mean, I suppose like, okay, he probably looked at my bib number. There was something in there that I'm like, that's so like, what an ingenious sort of like thing to think about in the moment when you're like trying to help someone. But it was actually more interesting than that. He had seen I was wearing my jersey from my track club, and he realized he was already following our club on Instagram. Um, and mind you, he's not American. He lives in Ireland. So I'm like, as all these pieces start to come together, I'm like, none of it makes sense. I'm like, how is this guy who lives in Ireland? Why is he following my club here in Los Angeles? How did he get there? He then saw they were reposting pictures of me, who then he reached out to my friend, who then was able to connect me. Anyway, so I get in touch with this guy, and I said, like, I'm first of all, I'm so grateful to you. Also like, I'm trying to fill in all the pieces of like, of what happened. I have no idea, like what happened to me. So we were messaging back and forth for a little while. And then it turned out, I made a joke about something, and we realized we were actually staying at the same hotel, which is also funny. I mean, in a city the size of Tokyo, that you're, in this same tiny little hotel. As this person, I said, well, okay, once I get out of here and we're back at the hotel, I said, I need to like at least buy you a beer or something. So he and so my friend, the other friends who were there, she actually came to get me out of the hospital just to bring me back, and brought me some of my things, and brought me back to my hotel. So I meet up with this guy and his wife, and we have a really lovely conversation. And so I was able to kind of figure out what happened. It turned out, it was probably like as I was approaching the finish chute, there's sort of just this one long road. And you can, I think if you look far, like you can actually see the finish. It's literally the 0.2 of the 26.2.
Yeah.
So you're at the last quarter mile. And this guy and this other woman had seen me kind of struggling up, I guess, up against kind of the barricade or sort of off to the side. And both agreed, they're like, you're too close to let you, to not finish. So let's like, so they both kind of carried me like under my arms, and, to get me across the finish line. And I have no memory of it. They asked me, they said, do you want to finish? And I said, yes, I guess. And and so that was that. And then I ended up, so once the official photos came out, that was actually probably the most upsetting part, was to see like, the finish line photos of myself. I literally looked unconscious. And so I was able to find this other woman. I looked up her bib, and reached out to her as well. So all of this is to say, I know this is like this crazy story. You're probably like, why is this a favorite memory? And I think it really shows how important of a community this is of runners, that like you can be across the globe with people from countries all over the world, and people will stop and help you. That if you're in the most dire of moments, and in a moment of need, someone will stop their own race and pick you up and literally carry you across the finish line, because it's that important. And that really, I think, gave me a sense of a sort of a shift of my own priority of like, okay, I think we all have to ask ourselves of like, would we do that for someone else? And it's like, of course we would. I hope we all would. That if someone is, that we support each other. It's not the kind of sport where it's all, where it's just cutthroat and competition, that it's actually about like caring for people, and that you can find community in any part of the world with other runners and make new friends and find other old friends, and that you're never truly alone. Um, and I think it just really drives home that this is a team sport. Even if you're not being scored as a team, you're supporting your teammates, and your teammates are all of the other runners that, you check on people, you make sure they're okay. If you see someone struggling, you ask them, or do you need anything? Are you okay? Even if you're in a race and you're working on your own, your own goal, and you have your own experience, we don't leave anybody behind. Um, and so I think that for me was really just uh, it was such a profound and honestly heartbreaking experience. I mean, just because I have no memory of finishing, I don't really know how much time I kind of lost in my memory, and it was obviously terrifying. But knowing that not only I came out of it okay, but that I was able to really, it really brought me just some incredible relationships. And eventually when it felt okay, I was able to, laugh about it and tell a good story. Um, I had the photo of myself from the finish line where I'm being propped up by by these two people. It looks like the Weekend at Bernie's cover art on
Oh my God.
the video. So
Runner
that was kind of,
edition.
so to be able to sort of laugh about it eventually. But yeah, that's kind of that's what I think about, because it really just it hits so many different themes of why this is an important sport and why it's unique, and why you don't see this really, I don't think, in any other sport.
I have gone through a lot of emotions hearing your story. I went from shocked to goosebumps to wanting to cry to just that is a lot. And I can only imagine how frightening it must have been for you, even for those people, those two people who helped you cross the finish line. That had to have been so scary because they didn't know what was going on with you. I'm assuming
Yeah.
they helped you get into some of the medics' hands, and then medics kind of took over. But that is just, when you think of your race day, and we do so much planning for race day, that is not something any of us prepare for, right? Of like going to a medic tent, of not being well enough to remember finishing. And I'm like, I just have like maybe the silliest question I can possibly have, and I'm sure you've gotten it. Do you feel like you need or want to go back to Tokyo to run that marathon again so that you could finish, like so that you could remember finishing it?
That's actually a good question. I would love to go back to Tokyo just as to visit again. It's a great city. I had a wonderful time there. Um, I don't know. I don't know that I would, to be honest. As far as to run the marathon. I mean, look, I think I'd obviously be at the mercy of the lottery again. And that was already kind of felt like a one in a million. I got my chance. Um, I think there might be something about it, at least. I think about this as just happening. This was 8 months ago, so it's, or 9 months ago. It still feels a little bit recent. I
Mhm.
don't know that I would feel, um, do I need that as a redemption, or would it feel too triggering, or traumatizing? I don't know. I don't know that I need to run it again. I
Yeah,
think, I look, if I hadn't finished, I would say absolutely. I need to go back and get that medal.
right.
But I got my medal. I finished. Um, and I'm proud of the effort I put in. I don't feel like it was a failed race in any sense. Other, the finish being its own sort of experience. Um, and it really was just that last part that I don't have the memory of. Um, look, I mean, maybe in many years down the road, if the opportunity ever were to present itself, that might be, I might have a different view of it. But, I think since then, I have really tried to, in the couple races that I've done, That's where I've sort of tried to have redemption. Um, and in fact, I ran the CIM marathon a couple last week. And, as I was getting closer to the finish, I was having these like very intentional mental check-ins of like, okay, you're at mile 24, you're at mile 25. Like, remember this if for some reason something happens. And that was very emotional for me, knowing that like, okay, like, and like I was feeling fine. I had no issue and I didn't have any reason to think that I was going to have a problem, but that happened in
Yeah.
Tokyo too. So it was really also, I was doing it to redeem myself from that like, okay, you're going to get to the finish line, you're going to have that feeling of euphoria, um and you're going to celebrate it today. And so, but remembering that I was having those moments of mental check-in, similar to how I had been doing in Tokyo, um so that I could really appreciate it. And I appreciated it a lot. I did not take it for granted. So yeah, so I think because I had that positive experience, I don't know that I need to necessarily repeat it there.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just curious because I'm like, I just don't even know what I would do, but it brings me, and you've kind of touched upon it, brings me to my next question of how has this memory shaped who you are as a runner now?
Um, so I think it's, a few things. Number one, I think it just kind of on the most kind of tactile level of, understanding fueling and hydration and what are the things that maybe we overlook, or what, when you take something, have an experience like that, you don't want to replicate it, because you're never going to be able to be in control of the weather
Hmm.
on race day. So regardless of whatever you're dealt with, how can you do your best to prepare, right? So I did think back a little bit and, tried to reflect of like, okay, what would I have done differently that would have maybe prevented this? Like, I probably didn't hydrate well enough the day before. My fueling was fine. Like I had been carb loading and, during the race, I had all my gels and all of that, but like thinking, okay, I probably should have hydrated better the day before. I probably shouldn't have done so much walking. I was probably a little bit, I mean, you're traveling in the world and you want to see stuff. And
Yeah.
um, so those are like little tweaks that I made, just of things that like, okay, how can you look at certain experiences and what can you make changes for next time? So on one level, that was, that's kind of the most basic, of just being able to pay attention and to really be, to treat that part of the preparation with the utmost seriousness because the consequences can be so grave. Um, but on a more on a more spiritual level, I think it really just it showed me that there's, that people will look out for you and that we have to look out for each other, that I had my experience of someone looking out for me. And I know that I have to do that for someone else should that opportunity present itself. I hope something like this on that level doesn't happen to me or to anyone, but knowing that like that is actually my responsibility. It's all of our responsibility to take care of each other because nothing is more important. Um, if someone's really struggling to the point that, they're really at risk. So I think just as far as, what my priorities are, yeah, my priority, I want a PR and I want to, you know, have my own accomplishments, but I also want to make sure that other people are, alive at the end of their race. And, again, I hope that that is the most extreme example, and something that doesn't happen to me or to anyone, but knowing that that is part of the responsibility because we all are out there by ourselves, but we're not by ourselves. We have to take care of each other. Um, and I think also just it really, it was hard to come back from that. It was hard to, once I had physically recovered and emotionally recovered, um, and then came back to the States eventually and, kind of had to like sit with all of that of you have to pick yourself up and keep going. Um, I mean, I guess you don't have to. Like I could have said this is
Right.
it. And that would have been a perfectly valid choice to say like this is my retirement moment. But I didn't choose that. I chose to sit with it, feel what I needed to feel, have that, kind of full 360 of emotions and process the experience and then just pick myself up and keep going. Um, and try to just do it better, do it differently the next time. And, you know, and really just use, and it's also not, and look, it was a great race otherwise. Like I did really well. And if I hadn't, had that kind of collapse at the end, I would have PR'd. I was doing great. I felt really strong. I was enjoying the hell out of it. So like, it wasn't all a challenge. It really was an incredible experience. And I think just to not be afraid to, to go out and to travel somewhere by yourself and to push, to push your limits if that's something that you feel comfortable and safe doing. Um, and so, I think because I wouldn't want to miss out on the great experience of it because of the fear. And the fear was very real. I was having a lot of anxiety before CIM. It was kind of resurfacing, like, oh no, like what if something happens again? Um, you know, this is not this is not an experience I care to repeat. But also knowing that, having to sort of talk myself down from that because sometimes the circumstances just are specific to that moment. I'm like, yeah, it was hot. Like a lot of people were really struggling that day. It wasn't me. It wasn't just me. Um, so kind of, yeah, learning to conquer that was huge.
I mean, that is, again, it sounds like such a frightening experience. And it sounds like it's been a very empowering recovery from that experience in terms of getting yourself. And I was going to be like, spoiler alert, y'all, she ran another marathon, but then you brought it up. So I didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But because it could have been an experience that left its mark on you in a way that meant you wouldn't ever run another marathon. And yet you didn't. And I can only imagine that as you were training for this marathon, there's still always going to be those milestones of putting myself in your shoes. I think the long run would have really overwhelmed me. The prospect of doing a long run and like, okay, how am I going to respond? Like just that added awareness to what you're saying of like an added awareness of how are you feeling? How are you hydrating? How mindful of are you of how much time you're spending on your feet? Like it definitely makes you have to tune in more to the details of your running so that you can show up that day on the race day feeling as confident in your potential as possible. And I'm going to go into like a series of questions with this in mind for you. If you could go back in time to speak to your younger runner self, what words would you have for them?
Oh gosh. Um, I think I would say, because my younger runner self, I think back to high school. And I think about, the experiences I had with my team, that were wonderful and some of, the best parts of high school for me. Um, I think I would say this is not the peak that that you're gonna have. In some ways it felt like that because it's like, oh, like how much higher can I achieve? Our team, got to where we did and I, I was young. And you think you can't envision that your life is going to get bigger and better. Um, and just to say that like, oh, you're going to run distances farther than a 5K. I don't think I ever um, fathomed that I would run marathons as a kid. The cross country distance 5K was perfect. That felt long at the time. And I know for some folks that's where they cap out and it's a wonderful distance.
Mhm.
Um, but I never imagined that I would ever run or race anything farther than that. And that, yeah, there's still so many cool experiences to have in the world. Um, because I think at the time I remember thinking, oh, it's never going to get better than this. And that's just not true. Um, and I think just continuing to remind myself that even when you're out on your own as an adult, it still is a team sport. Um, in the same way that it was, running on an actual team, that we still take care of each other, we still support each other. Um, and that would not be, that's something that would not change even as, I got older and, had new solo experiences, not on a team.
Yeah. Looking forward, what hopes do you have for your future runner self?
So, I'm about to turn 47. I feel like I am, I am feeling the aging. I'm trying to adapt with it. And, I'm certainly don't have any plans to stop anytime soon, but just kind of setting goals with that context in mind of that, like, okay, like I want to be really intentional about what I do and how I treat my body. Um, and, I would love to qualify for Boston. I feel like that's something within reach in the next couple of years. We'll see. Like that would be a huge milestone, a huge accomplishment. I used to live in Boston. I have family who lives there, so that would feel like a very
Like a
important
homecoming.
experience. What?
It's like a homecoming.
Yeah, I think that's it. And that was sort of really when I kind of was re-inspired um, to run as an adult when I lived there after college. Um, so I think that would be an incredible goal and something that I see for myself in the future. Um, I love traveling. I loved going to Tokyo. I love going to other parts of the world and incorporating running somehow into traveling, choosing a travel destination based on on a marathon or on some other race, to be able to do more of that and to just be, just to continue to find new ways to enjoy the sport. And, continue just, my goal is with with the runners that I coach, is like to be runners for life, if that's what you choose. And so, and I want to choose that for myself. So I think just I see finding new opportunities to get to explore the world, explore this country, try new things. I mean, there's certain things I have no, like my husband said to me, he's like, well, what's like after marathon running? I'm like, nothing like that. Like, I'm not interested in ultras. I'm not interested in, the 50 miles and the 100 miles, like all that. Like, I'm impressed with people who do that, but that's not at all. Like that's the peak, as far as distance. So, maybe kind of looking backwards a little bit and finding, shorter distances to get better at. But yeah, just, I'm in a space right now because I'm just a week out from from a marathon of really just enjoying not knowing what's next, as far as the immediate future. But knowing that there'll be something will come up. And I like, being open to, whatever experience may land in my lap.
Yeah, it's like let the path unfold as you run it. And
Yeah.
it's okay. Um, okay, this question, now I'm very curious after your experience, is just how do you celebrate yourself as a runner?
I think, part of it, I've always, I love to just really process, an experience. And I think a lot about, I think about running all the time, as a coach and as a runner. It's sort of like a big part of my day. But really being able to kind of process and ask questions, because I think that's where I sort of find the things about running that I want to celebrate and be, and that I'm proud of. And sort of finding those, like, what is that story? Like, what is the story in, an experience like Tokyo or the experience I just had at CIM? Because none of these are linear stories. And I think, I really love to celebrate that, and that you can kind of find your way in an experience like that, where you can kind of pull these pieces and reflect on them and make sense of it. And like, you get to craft the story, you get to
Hmm.
create the narrative of, of your life, and particularly in running. Um, and, even when there are hurdles and when there are struggles, and even if the outcome isn't what you want, you can still find a way to make it a story that is important and worthy of your celebration. Um, so I think I like to think about it a lot and then figure out how to tell that story. And it's something, it comes through when I'm talking to the athletes that I coach. Um, when I share my own work and my own successes, on social media, or, in other places, or just in talking to people. Um, I think I like that it can be a very deep intellectual experience, and a very, of course, emotional as well.
So emotional. I mean, I don't even like the story is just so incredible because I've seen images, right? Like I feel like whenever there's marathons, there's not always, but there are more often than you would think those images of someone being carried across the finish line or of someone helping someone cross the finish line. But I've never actually spoken to someone who's had that experience. And to hear your story, it's just it's interesting because I always think of the paths you could have taken, right? You could have taken one path of, I'm done with running. You could have taken a path of, I'm never running a marathon again. Or you could have taken the path that you took, which was, I'm going to run another marathon, but I'm going to take these lessons and all this reflection, I'm going to take it with me to help me show up, whatever, stronger, more prepared, more hydrated, whatever that term is for you. Because the reality is your experience in Tokyo, that was Tokyo's experience. There's nothing that says that your next marathon is going to be the exact same thing because unless that marathon is happening with the exact same conditions, you're never going to replicate it. And I say that as someone
Right.
who's ran multiple marathons in the same place, and every year is a totally different experience. Every year I'm different, right? And I think that's the power of these stories is that recognition of the ending is never final, right? Like this story is still unraveling, and I think it's going to probably be a story that will continue to unravel and continue to be told by you for the years to come because how can you not be changed by that experience? I don't know.
Yeah. I do think about how, right. Like, I think we always have, as runners, we're always presented with choices. Um, and, getting to choose whether it's what race you're doing next, or how much effort you want to put into something, or how you even respond mentally to it. I think those are all choices, and they're all valid choices. And yeah, that I think being able to understand that this is one story in what is hopefully for me a lifetime of stories, and maybe the story that won't even be the most interesting or the most important when I look back on my life and
Yeah.
20 years from now, or longer. So I think yeah, no, I'm it's an interesting way to think about it, because yeah, you're right, like everything was so specific to that moment. um but that's what made it unique. And I'll have other moments to celebrate and wrestle with going forward. I'm sure nothing is linear, nothing is easy or uncomplicated. There's always something.
Yeah,
um
absolutely. All right. I have two more questions for you.
yeah.
The first question is, where do we find you? How do we better connect with you? Drop those links. Let us know your
Yeah.
Instagram. Share, 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 share.
Yeah. So my Instagram is Coach Kim LA. I don't post as often as I would like to, but I always try to highlight my the runners that I coach when especially when they've had a big accomplishment themselves and share that on there. And one of my goals for the new year is to be a little bit more active over there, just to continue celebrating and putting more good content out there. My website is coachkim.la. And that's just sort of my landing page where you can find everything about my work. I don't actually have this really much on social media at all because they're children, but I started coaching high school cross country and track last year. And I will occasionally post some things. I try not to, uh, have too much identifying information about minors, but I do occasionally post about that. It's a lot of fun. I've had the best time working with this group. My daughter is actually one of the runners, and so it's been really special to do that. So, looking at ways to continue sharing about and celebrating youth runners who also hopefully are building a love of running and a lifetime of running if that's what they choose. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I am.
I love that. All right. Final question is, what are your final words for us?
Oh wow. Um, I think really that, I'll just repeat what I said that, running and the experience in this sport, it's nonlinear. Um, I think if I'm offering that as advice, that's probably the best the best advice I can give, that we don't necessarily go from, you know, one place and then you end up in the next, that there are a lot of ups and downs. Whether those are health challenges or, crappy race day weather or, other factors in life that maybe take us out of the sport for a while, but that it's something, running is growing constantly. It's getting so big. It'll always be here, I think. And so even if you have to step away, it'll be here when to welcome you back, and that it's never, you can always find new ways to connect and new ways to have a meaningful experience. I did not envision that in my mid 40s, I would, find a running group to be a part of. And it's mostly people who are a lot younger than me. And it's really fun. Not something I would have imagined I was going to do, or that I was even going to be running marathons at all. I think just leaving yourself open to possibility and to surprises and to unexpected experiences, because you never know when you put yourself out there as a runner, what the people that you'll meet, the places you'll get to travel to, the experiences that you'll get to have. And it's just, I think just being open to it as sort of infinite possibility. That's what I love about it. So that would be my parting thoughts.
Thank you, Kim, for sharing those words and sharing your story. And I know that I will be sitting with that story for a bit. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
yeah, all right, everyone. We'll see you next time. Be grateful for the body that you have and the body that allows you to run. If that's, just take that away from here today, too. So thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.